Welcome to the Real Reflections Calling Dave podcast, co-hosted in Carrington, North Dakota by my brother Dave and me, Grant Nelson, here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Even in a world of turmoil and chaos, you can come here and get some good old-time rural content. Isn't that kind of the way we look at it there, Dave?
Yeah, we're in a pretty good place, I think. Our day is probably pretty mundane and so on, but we do the same thing day after day, and we're kind of quite a ways from a lot of the craziness that exists in the world.
Yeah. We take the mundane and the boring and make it comforting entertainment.
Okay.
How's everything going out in Carrington? Are people wrapping things up? How are the row crops coming along, that sort of thing?
Well, we're at least going now. I would say much of our row crops won't be planted. I just talked to a guy yesterday, and he's just starting his wheat. But he had some ground that he wanted soybeans on, and it was higher ground. So he had planted his soybeans first, or at least some of his soybeans first. So he's just getting started with wheat yesterday. So it's quite far behind here, but there's going to be a lot of PP done. I hear guys talking, making plans for what they're going to do with it and all that already. So,
when you say PP, you're talking about prevented planting. What are they talking about doing with it? Are they just going to summer follow it or what?
Oh no, I think they'll. I imagine first of all they'll have to spray it because it's wet, and I don't think they want to go out and tear it up too much, but. They'll spray it and keep the weeds down for a bit on it, and then they will work it. And then at some point when it's fit, they'll put, I'm sure, they have to put cover crop on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I was thinking when you were talking there, I think they do have to have some sort of cover crop on it. So, that one thing we talked to each other last night too beforehand, and we were talking about how fast people can put crops in. I had a buddy of mine send me a picture of a planter. He said he figured it was up in Canada. 114 rows. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but is that even possible, or have you heard of something like that?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's possible. I mean, we have 90-foot planters, so they have 60 rows in them, and I mean it doesn't take much. Especially if you're doing 22-inch rows or something like that, So it gets to be crazy. I mean, the size of something like that. But, I'm sure there is, and I don't know what row spacing they're using, but you got to have a nice big field to have a 90-foot wide planter in it. But there's one farmer out here that has a big planter like that, and he has a 1,200-acre field, and one round is 47 acres.
Wow, that's amazing. I saw across from our place 2 weeks ago, I saw a 48 row, I think it's 48 row, 36 plus 12, 48 row planter across the road. And I had to stop and back up and look at it again. I'm like, are you kidding me? Two things. I couldn't believe how big it was. And the second thing I thought of right away is, when's the power going to go out? When's that going to hit a utility pole?
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem with those things is they have so much weight on them, I mean, the 72 row or whatever, when you have a 30-inch, what they call interplant, so then you can plant at 15 inches. So they'll have a row unit in the front, a row unit in the back. So then you have 72 rows in a 36-row planter, and so it gets to be crazy. I mean, I don't know. It's most likely a narrow row planter, 15-inch rows or something, and they want to plant canola now with planters, not with the drills as much, because they get very good emergence out of a planter. They can control the depth a lot better, and they can cut the seed that's required. So that's probably what they're doing up there. They have some sort of a planter with a huge hopper, pull behind hopper or whatever, and then they're planting canola in big acreages.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at all that. Now, we picked out a topic before we started today's podcast. Most interesting modifications or most interesting, creations on the farm. And I've got one I'd like to start out with. It's the self-contained ladder or steps. I've seen these on usually old tractors or sometimes even kind of pretty good-sized lawnmowers or garden tractors maybe, where they've taken and they've mounted steps onto the side of the tractor, or they've mounted a ladder so that they can just drive it from one place to the other. And this is something I saw quite a bit of back in the 90s when people had all these different grain bins that they wanted to go check, and before we got the technology to have remote checking, that they'd have these and they'd drive from one spot to the other and just climb up there and check the grain bins. And I always thought that was such a good idea because I don't like carrying ladders around. I always think they're kind of bulky to carry around, and I usually hit something when I'm carrying mine around. So I always thought that was a good invention.
It was probably invented by the same guy that mounted the grain auger to the tractor.
Yeah.
No, they used to take and even someone would use a belt pulley to run an auger. Yep. And they would use the hydraulics to raise and lower it and stuff. But that was, I think, before the 130-foot long auger, because it takes a pretty big tractor now to handle an auger like that, Yeah, I know they make some. A lot of people have an awful lot of good engineering skill. It just never gets put to use, and so on. I mean, I've talked about 5 or 6 people that are around here. One guy made a barrel crusher, and another guy, they were all building something cool, but never went any further than that. Just got, their 1 or 2 things they had built, or 3 or 4 things. And if they had all gotten together on an idea, man, they would have come up with something wild.
They probably would have. I don't doubt that at all. Just like that machinist who rebuilt the steam tractor last year that showed up, or not last year, he did it over the course of a couple of years, but showed up at Rolog last year.
With the tractor?
That big steamer that young man had put together.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's right. They were going to bring it there one year, and now it's not going to move again, is it? It's supposed to stay in South Dakota after this.
Okay.
At that. Yeah, I know that guy. I don't know. He apparently had the backing or the funds to do it. I think that's what a lot of these guys are lacking when you see, some of these homemade inventions and so on. They just don't have the kind of money and the access to equipment that some people do. Otherwise, they could do some wild things.
It's for sure reminds me of the back of the successful farming back in the old days when they had those good ideas that farmers had come up with, and I think they'd give everybody who had an idea that they put in the magazine, I think they gave them $50 or something like that. And I always liked that. That was the first thing when we got successful farming at home. I'd flip it over, go right to the back page.
That's what I would do too. Isn't that funny? And some of those things were so dumb.
Yep.
I mean, they were not, but boy, some of them were really cool. And somebody had put an awful lot of thought into how to make something interesting.
That's what I thought too. Sometimes it was just a good way to hitch up a trailer or something like that. And it was like, wow, for a little bit of money and some weld, you could have quite a time saver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got anything else for us this week, Dave?
No, I guess not. We're going to go back to church today. So
nice.
We haven't been there for a while. So that's going to be kind of nice to have things opening up a little bit.
Have you seen the church? Do you have to social distance out in North Dakota? Do you have to be 6 feet apart, or?
Yeah, they've got it all marked off and stuff like that. I don't know how it's going to be now after they've changed the level of seriousness or whatever. So we're level green now. So a lot of different things opened up that hadn't been.
Well, back in the old days, everybody kind of felt like they had their own pew, but now maybe nowadays they will have their own pew. You get one assigned, and that's the one you'll be there all the time. So, well, Dave, tell everybody hello out there, would you please?
All right. See you, Grant.
See you later. There he is, my brother Dave, on our Rural Reflections Call-in Dave podcast. Dave co-hosts in Carrington, North Dakota. Me, Grant Nelson, here in Thief River Falls, Minnesota, at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio.